Welcome to the Classroom Narratives Healing in Education podcast, the space where education meets resilience. I'm Dr. Joey Weisler, and in each episode, we dive deep into the personal stories of educators, students, leaders, and frontline advocates who are navigating the complexities within modern education. Whether you're just starting your teaching journey or are a seasoned professional looking for inspiration, we'll explore how to foster meaningful change, prevent burnout, and build trauma-informed communities within our schools. Now, let's take a seat at the front of the classroom as we get started. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to today's episode of the Classroom Narratives podcast. This is Dr. Joey Weisler, and I'm so privileged to be joined by Supriya Budhiraja, all the way from India, to talk to us about international perspectives on education. It is such a privilege to have Supriya join me on the show because we're going to have a really powerful discussion today to see some of the core similarities and differences between how education works through a social and emotional learning perspective, how trauma-informed education works, and really trying to dissect this system and all of its parts throughout our entire globe. So, Supriya, welcome to the conversation, and thank you for helping us broaden our perspectives about what is truly possible within education. So glad you're here with us.
Thank you so much, Joy. It's an honor to be in this show.
I'm so glad we found each other. And so, Supriya, I wanted to ask again, because most of our listeners are based in America, many of our educators are grappling with how to make education more student-centered, teaching to the heart over the brain, the heart in terms of getting to their emotions versus the brain where we just try and feed them logic. This term of social and emotional learning has become a buzz, if you will, here in America. And I'm wondering, in India, how does trauma-informed learning shape our classrooms, and what can Americans gain from the perspective that you have on that?
So, I've been a Teach for India fellow, and during our trainings, we've been in touch with fellows from Teach for America. And I believe our stories have been same of getting the students in the classroom, building that psychological safety. But over here in India, the only difference is that there are first generation students coming in the classroom. And over here, the parents are allowed to hit the children. So there are a lot of things that happen. The similarity over here with the fellows, what I hear the story from there and here, falls almost the same. And the only thing that the parent look upon is that their child going regular to the school, not missing out. So sometimes life is so harsh, they have to earn their bread, like they're daily wage earners. And for that, sometimes they need help of their children, which as a consequence, they miss the school. And at the end, literacy goes nowhere, children missing the school, or when they're coming to school, either they are beaten up or they're burned. One of my most memorable experience is one of my child coming to the school. She was all burned. Her hands were burned, her face was burned, something had happened back home. And the reason that I got to know was that she did not want to come to school. So her parents, her specifically her mother, because she was a single parent, she had burnt her hand and her face also. And on my asking, because everything was just coming out, so it was all swollen and it required medical attention. So when I asked her, let's go back home, we're gonna visit the doctor, she was scared. And the other students came up as that we can't go back home. If we go back home, we'll be beaten up more. And so is in the school. We are not accepted in the classroom. We can't sit in the classroom. They never ask whether we are feeling at ease or not. So I took her to the medical center, the hospital nearby, got her treated. And that is where I realized that the importance of having that safety in the classroom if they're not getting anywhere, what is a role a teacher plays in the life of the child. And that is where my journey actually began as a teacher trainer, as someone who want to work in this sector and have student voices out in my country in the classrooms. That students have their voice, they have their, and the classrooms are more student centric than the teacher being the dictator.
So the school really is that safe space for the students then.
Yes, it is. So right now we struggle with poverty. Though we are developing, we have grown a lot, and still this poverty is still a concern. So being the bread earner, being illiterate, and they want their children to be in the school, and children not listening, getting into drugs or something, or maybe just to earn a living, getting into a wrong side, like I would say. There are a lot of jobs that you don't want your children to do it, right?
Right.
And that is where the barrier comes. That is where the parents become really strict and they want their child to listen to them. But for a child at that time, knowing their circumstances, wants to break through, wants
Right.
to help. And that is where this drift happened. That is where this confusion happened. That is where this whole argument start. And they end up, rather than explaining and letting the child know, they end up hitting out of frustration. Because parents are frustrated, they need to earn the living. The child is frustrated that I want to help and I want to be there and I want to get out of this vicious cycle of poverty. But without realizing that education is the key, it is really important, they don't realize. So that is where we build up in the classroom to make them understand that education is the only key that going to get you out of every trouble. That is where we started our learning circle. That is where, when we sat down and spoke about a lot of things, and children actually open up, when they were allowed in the classroom to sit at the back, not to study, we were okay with that. Because language was also a barrier. Everyone over here wants English to be their known language so that they can, go around for the job. Now comes over here the scene of NAP that actually focuses on developing the skill, the vocational skill. Earlier, our education was majorly theatrical, not actually polishing the skills out of the children. This became a support system where, if they're have that subject of their own choice. Maybe they're not good with business studies, but they're good in entrepreneurship. Maybe they're not good with computer science, but they're good with IT. So maximum children drop out after grade 9. So till 8, we have compulsory education over here. So children are given free midday meals so that they come to school. And after that, they just, like, half of the strength vanishes. So we have to actually go in the communities and catch them to come back to the classroom and continue their studies. These different vocational courses come in place, and this helps them to carry on their passion and understand that they can do something.
That's an incredible anecdote. Thank you for sharing all of that to start with. And you're making me think about, what does classroom discipline look like?
So we have a proper teacher training things, and the classroom management, classroom culture, classroom routines, each and every training is done. But when it comes to the classrooms, there are in one classroom, there are more than 60 children in one classroom. And it's like 60:1 is the ratio. That's I'm talking about when we move on to the underprivileged school. But whereas in private sector, we do have that bandwidth where 30:1 or 25:1 is the ratio. Those are the parents who have the capacity to pay, and the privileged one have it. But then again, the struggle remains the same. When you are entering the classroom, what kind of culture are you building? What is the psychological safety you are building? So we create those small, we call it learning circles, where we sit and every day we have a conversation for around 10 minutes, knowing how their day look like, what were the things. And even sometimes we also share our own fears, our own traumas. That builds the trust.
What did you gain from your studies and your research about how to continue supporting and improving student conditions?
My grandparents were daily wage earners. So my grandma was the domestic helper, going out to the teachers' houses, washing their utensils, doing their work, making sure that her children get a chance to study and they're being taken care of. The teacher treats them well. So from there, I've seen my father doing a lot and taking care of his sibling. Being the youngest one, yet he was the strongest one who supported each and every sibling, and he gave everything to us. So we went to a proper school. We had all the luxuries, I would say, and even traveling around the world, the kind of exposure he gave us. But at the same time, he made us go back to our root. So whenever we used to go back to our village, so over there's a small school, and I found myself always being there and realizing the value of education. That that is where I started my journey. That is where I realized. And the another thing that I would definitely say is, as I said, that it's the educator who builds in the classroom culture. So I've been judged a lot. There have been a lot of times I've not been heard. So there was only one teacher I still remember. She was always on my support. One teacher putting faith in me to what I'm saying, and I felt being heard. That is where I felt that classroom need these kind of teachers. And then during my training, I heard Rita Pearson. Every child needs that one champion. That
Yes.
hit me so hard. It took me back to the journey. And that is where I was like, okay, I'll make sure that champion stays in the class and that each child deserves that champion.
I think Rita Pearson has to be the face of every new
Yes.
teacher program.
I
Be-
definitely, so that's the first video that I play when I
yes.
just enter my training, enter with my team. That's the first thing I play, and I want to see how they feel because it just gives you goosebumps. It hits you so
Yes.
hard inside, and it get back to your story that did you have that champion? That's a bigger question that even as an educator we struggle. Did we have that champion? Was there any one person we had that we could really think of or rely on? That is where you hit that emotional part, and that is where they start thinking.
And I feel like most new teachers go into education, like you said, Supriya, because they've had that champion. And deep down, despite all the challenges that we face, we know we can have the potential to become like that champion because they were able to do it for us. So it's like we're paying
I
it
would have
forward.
Actually, I would have loved it if what you're saying would have been 100% true. But what I see over here in my country, so the job of teacher is not valued. It's considered like, okay, for a girl, oh, you're gonna get married. You need to, take care of your family and balance things out. So teaching is the best profession. Even though if she wants to become a doctor, even if she wants to become a pilot, even if she wants to be in a corporate, she's not allowed. At the end, she's forced by her family, for her circumstances to get into the teaching job. So this also matter whether are you a teacher by choice or by chance. That plays an immense role.
And for those that are a teacher by chance, like how do they work through the profession? Because that's tough. Even teachers who want to be it because it's their choice, even they have a very challenging time. So what is it like for those that are in it by force?
The teacher by choice, they're gonna go a milestone ahead with their own will. They'll be happy doing things. They'll keep evolving. They're gonna look onto the opportunities what they can get, right? But whereas teachers by chance, you need to push them every now and then. You need to sit with them. You need to talk with them because they themselves are sometimes so frustrated that they don't want to do the job. Their circumstances are making them be here. They miss going back to their corporate job. They miss going back to what they love. So that is where a coach comes into scene, where you need to sit and talk and keep probing, or maybe just finding out opportunities within the system. Recently, one of the teachers said, like, I don't want to be in this teaching. I've been good in admin. So that is where it just came. So can we create an opportunity that she can shift into admin and get her things, get what she wants? So this is the shift that I believe there's a need of shift of a mindset. That teaching job is not easy. You can't say that you to balance your family. Oh, you're gonna go at 7 and be back by 2 p.m. so you'll be able to handle. No, it's not that. It's a whole day thing. Even after coming back home, you are busy with the administrative work. You're busy making the reports. You're busy making your lesson plans. So there are times you don't get time in the school. You're just coming back with the whole work at home, and there is no appreciation to it. We struggle. Right now, what gives me a hope is that my students who were with me once when I was a fellow in grade 6, now they are a fellow and they are leading ahead and they are leading all these things of giving back to the community, getting up and making sure the spaces created are now safe. So we are actually working, and I can say the hope is still there, and it has started shining in India actually. It has just started.
That's a beautiful story of resilience. And it makes me wonder because I think we deal with that a lot in America as well, but I'm always interested to hear like different extremes of that, if you will, in terms of how do teachers in India have trauma-informed training? What does that look like? Trauma-informed teacher training. And how do the educators that you work with try and care for themselves and not feel emotional exhaustion because of the types of experiences they hear from their students on a regular basis?
When you say like trauma informed, as I told you, like this word is not used over here. They're not much aware about this. But yeah, social emotional learning is taking a boom of understanding their own emotion and understanding the emotions of the children. If you go like specific with what a trauma informed training look like, I won't say it is like a full awareness over here. It is very less, but yes, right now they're putting their spaces where they're talking about building this social emotional learning in place, specifically acknowledging the emotions of the child. But what trauma they're coming from or how they need to be dealt of, that is still a struggle. That is where teacher need to go back to the counselor, and sometimes they don't even realize. So that is still a struggle, I would say.
Right. So just understanding what trauma is before you can become
Yeah.
trauma informed. We have to define it before we know how to act on it.
Exactly, exactly. So sometimes even while having a discussion of what has happened or what led to the action of you talking to the child in front of the whole class or just raising your voice, so we just realize the teacher is not even informed that the background of the child, from where the child is coming from, or if there is a certain kind of a behavior, why is it? So the why gets missing. That is where we need to push them.
Yeah, because I know that here in the States, the social worker situation or the school counselor situation is that there are extremely high caseloads of students with very low resources to work with. And for those that want more of a counselor's perspective from America, we can go ahead and check out Monica Langer from season 1. You'll have a link in the show notes. So, Supriya, I also wanted to think about what classroom discipline looks like with schools in India. Because I'll mention an example here in the States, and I'm going to be very transparent about it.
Mhm.
Normally, here in the States, the child is sent to the assistant principal or the principal. They have a little conversation, they get a lollipop, they come back, and they go about their business. And it's very challenging for teachers because they feel like there needs to be more accountability on the student's behavior in order for what occurred to be rectified and corrected. What are some steps towards mediating discipline that you've seen within your own school system?
I've been lucky enough to work with such management that they do listen to the teachers.
Mm.
And but versus the reality check is when you work with other managements, there are managements where they'll not listen. So the simplest thing they'll say is that if there is any complaint coming from the parent, so we'll never support you, we'll be on their side. So you have to be careful about your actions. You have to be careful about things. To versus the managements that I have worked with, they have been very supportive. So they do ask about things. They do help us and guide us that these are things that you must have so that when a parent or when something like this happen, we have evidences in place. We have things in place to show the parent that, the teacher is not at fault.
With managements that follow the mentality of the parent is always right,
That's true. That's
what
true.
what do they gain from that, especially in terms of building morale from their teachers?
So over here, when the principals are working, so they have this pressure of admissions also, they have this pressure
Mm.
of retaining also. So if they keep their, customers happy, I would say customers. I would not say over here as stakeholder, because right now they're customers because they're paying. They're coming, they're sending their children, they're paying us, and things are happening in the school because of the payment that is coming. And that is where sometimes we are also told if there are admissions, you'll get a salary hike. If there are no admissions, then you see where you're going. But then there are managements who actually believe in human as a resource. They actually
Yes.
believe in polishing their teachers. They actually believe in keeping everyone happy and bringing it a happy place. Because if everyone is happy, they'll build on happy culture, and so are the students, and so are the parents, and so is your admission increasing, and everything goes in a cycle. They all are linked together. You need to invest in human as a resource. You need to check upon to your culture whether it's a happy culture or not, or are you overburdening the teachers? So that is where the frustration sometimes get on, and then they
Right. So
blame the teacher.
so it's going from the customer is always right mentality because truthfully they are a paying customer to let's use the human as a resource as a way to find, I guess, leverage, if you will, and everyone who's involved in making education really matter.
That's true. And it also depends on the kind of school leader you are, what values or belief the leader carries. Sometimes there are leaders that are going to fight for you. They're going to really
Mhm.
stand up in front of the management and tell them that, hey, this is not working. You're going to burn them out and the
Mhm.
outcome will be zero. So the role of the principal is very crucial. The balance between the staff and the management, even also setting the right kind of expectation and also sharing what gonna lead what, because consequences are important, they need to know.
I love having those leaders that really try and fight for the well-being of their faculty because sometimes, again, they fight for the well-being of business, not
uh,
people.
but even though if we have such leaders, at the end of the day they are also employees. Somewhere they also have that burden, so I would give that benefit of doubt to them. Maybe they are also struggling with that, because the school is of the management, principal is the employee, so are the teachers.
So then what role do the parents play in education? Like in here, we have two extremes most of the time. We have the helicopter parents that are always very, very involved in the learning process to the point where it's like, well, they should just be taking the class themselves. And we have other parents that don't even know what courses their children are taking. What does the parent involvement look like where you are?
It's a mixture of those. When we have those helicopter parents, or those who are at least concerned, so that's where our role changes. With the helicopter parents, so with every little thing, it has to be reported. Every report, every
Mhm.
anecdote has to be sent, and then again, lot of conversation, and at the end, they're not happy. You are the one. You're not doing this. This has to be done. So we make them come to the classroom. We make them teach the
Wow.
children.
Really?
So once they take upon to the charge and they have that experience, that's where we build empathy with them. That's where we build that trust. Okay, hey, we are doing our job. No, we are doing our best. So trust us. And the trust builds up. That's where things starts happening in a smooth way. So that's why we hold a lot of events that where parents are invited to come and take over, because the best thing,
And
you give them the experience only then, and those
yeah,
who are least interested, so it's important for the student to empower. So what kind of things you require, and maybe like a little hand holding with the parent, because sometimes we feel that parents are not interested, but they have their own stories.
definitely. That's something we need to take note of here in America. I think that's a great strategy to bring in the parents and have them teach for a day.
Trust me, it works wonder when you're gonna have that
I
reflection.
would imagine. How are students graded in your system?
So, well, over here, our till grade 5, we have rubrics. We don't give marks, because earlier it was all marks, and it was becoming a very hard way of for the students to, and for the parents also. A lot of competition. So when you start giving marks, it is not the students, it's the parents who start competing. And
Yes,
that's
yes.
where we struggle. So every time they'll not realize that, okay, my kid has this caliber and he needs to work upon this, versus, oh, that kid got such good marks and my child is nowhere. What is your task?
Mm.
And is he really studying? And the kid, the poor chap, either will get humiliated or the teacher will get humiliated. So that's a little challenging over here to get the parents and acknowledge that, okay, this is where your child is appreciated. So we are trying our best to make sure that parents appreciate it. So they had stopped from giving them marks. They shifted it to competency based. They shifted to holistic. So till grade 5, they have given rubrics. Actually, schools can follow till grade 8. So there are proper rubrics for each competency. And then later, when you come to the higher grades of ninth and 10th, where they get a proper assessment, where they're given marks, they are being assessed at, and the board comes into place. That is across India, the Central Board of Secondary Education. Now, that is where things start happening from, because by the time the child is in ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, they know what marks means, they know how to be assessed. And that too system has changed now, rather than going to those rote memorization. So we want them to have to relate it with the real life. What is a real life in a situation going to look like?
How are the teachers working to make the learning relevant to their students so they aren't just learning or memorizing ideas, but rather really trying to apply them to what they want to do?
We have got project-based learning in space. So we actually took real-time thing which student-led, and they thought, okay, this is the problem that we need to lead. Like one of the school I remember took up the responsibility of creating a learning center in the community because they don't have a space to go and study. So they called it magical room, and they took the whole responsibility. Parents also came on board, where every evening the parents do the duty and the children come and they teach the younger ones. So that's how the rotation is happening, and it's beautiful to see.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of project-based learning is what
Yeah,
helps the students apply their knowledge and make it
that's
relevant
true.
and meaningful. Perfect,
That's true.
which I
That's
guess
true.
goes so far beyond memorization and recall.
Yeah, and that is where, so when I said it's like a holistic report,
Yes.
that is where when I know that one of my child cannot write, so maybe because
Mhm.
of some learning disability, but I can of course see how the child is presenting the idea, how he's communicating, what is the clarity of the concept he has or she has. So that
Exactly.
is where you it actually get into equity situation, that you know how to evaluate, and there are ample chances given to the student.
Definitely. And by doing so, you're involving the whole child in their learning process and not just
Yeah.
focusing on the brain.
That's true. So even for the higher grades this year, our CBSE has introduced two board exams.
Mm.
So they're given chance twice, not once. Like it's not like a do or die situation. So they
Yeah.
get chance twice that they can improve or they want to give again. So they're not actually getting that anxious or getting into that panic mode.
Right. Yeah. No, those are pretty high stakes graduation requirements in the States. And here, I mean, there's a risk of getting held back a grade if you don't succeed on your first try.
Our children go through a lot. That is why we see so many societal cases. That
Mhm.
is the thing. Maybe I'm really glad that our education system is not thinking about it. Our
Yeah,
government is thinking about it, of giving a lot of chances to the student. And this is where we need to polish the mindset of the teacher also.
exactly. And I love that
That,
because in giving chance, yeah, you're focusing on the child
y-
and not the
yeah,
brain,
yeah,
which are two
that's
totally
true.
different things.
That's true. So
Yeah,
you're more of student centric. If not one is
exactly.
cleared, maybe the other. So give
Exactly.
maximum opportunities.
What I'm gaining from this conversation is that the world is this big. The world is so small because education is just, it's exactly the same. It's like, wow, I was not expecting our similarities to really overlap to this extreme. So then what does trauma-informed education look like in India currently? And what can educators do to learn and grow? Like what can they still learn about the topic to benefit their classrooms?
I really think they need to first connect with what a trauma looks like. Having the understanding of trauma, not only of themselves also, because there are a lot of educators that join being an educator with their own trauma and their own struggling, and sometimes their biases plays very strong in the classroom.
Mhm.
There's a strong disbalance that comes up. So that is where I feel a lot of work has to be done. So when we have our counselors in place, we make sure that our educators are also going. So right after COVID, mental health has become a very strong concern across the globe. Even in India also, that had actually made them acknowledge that there is trauma, there are childhood traumas also. And even you as educator entering, you also have your own traumas which you carry along and you need to get healed before you move across, because
Yes.
it's important to go into the process of healing, which now this thing have started booming over here in India, but yet it's a long way to go.
Gosh, again, as we come to the end of our conversation, I'm continuing to really think about the fact that the more we try to globalize education, we see the world is so small. So, Supriya, what would you say is a takeaway from today's conversation in terms of what people in both India and American systems and all over the world in education should know? And what's maybe even a change that you wish we could see within the system?
I just feel that, like you said, your topic, it's trauma informed education. I think this is the need of the hour. This is the major thing. And my major takeaway is we're working upon is that being human, there's a lot of chaos
Yes.
around. We forget that after all, teachers are human, our students are human.
Where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. There, my older work, everything is there on LinkedIn.
Perfect. We'll have that link in the show notes for you as well. So Supriya, wow, thank you so much again for this excellent conversation. And hopefully what our listeners have gained here is that while the world is so big, education has so many commonalities that make it feel so much smaller. And the more we can learn to become more aware as to what's going on around us, the more likely we can then be able to change the system for everybody who is a part of it for the better. Thank you for joining us on the Classroom Narratives Healing in Education podcast. If today's episode inspired you or made you think differently, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or review wherever you listen to podcasts and stay connected with us on the @Classroom Narratives podcast over Instagram and Facebook. Remember, together we can transform our scars into stars in education, one conversation at a time.